I walked into my parents' house and found my 8-year-old daughter pinned to the kitchen chair, sobbing, while my sister held scissors to her beautiful curls. "Stop," I screamed, but it was too late. When I discovered why they did it, I realized my family wasn't just toxic, they were dangerous. It was supposed to be a simple Sunday afternoon visit to my parents' house in Millbrook. The kind of lazy weekend tradition that families build their memories around. You know the type: Sunday roast, board games, maybe some gardening if the weather was nice, normal, safe, predictable. My daughter Lily had been excited all week about visiting Grandma Beatrice and Grandpa Theodore at their cozy house on Maple Street. She'd been chattering nonstop since Thursday about showing them her latest art project, a watercolor painting of our cat, Mr. Whiskers, that she'd been working on at school. Her teacher, Mrs. Henderson, had even written a little note saying how proud she was of Lily's artistic progress. Lily loved these visits more than anything. She'd skip through their front door, her long auburn curls bouncing with each step, and immediately start her ritual tour of the house. First, she'd check Grandma Beatrice's cookie jar, always full of her famous snickerdoodles. Then she'd peek at Grandpa Theodore's bird feeder outside the kitchen window to see if the cardinals had come to visit. And finally, she'd settle into her favorite spot on the old floral couch in the living room, where Aunt Miranda would usually be waiting with some small gift or trinket she'd picked up during the week. These Sunday visits had been happening for 3 years, ever since my husband Jake and I moved to Millbrook after his job transfer. We'd bought a house just 15 minutes away from my childhood home, thinking it would be wonderful for Lily to grow up close to her grandparents. I'd had such fond memories of my own relationship with my grandmother, and I wanted Lily to experience that same kind of unconditional love and spoiling that only grandparents can provide. At 8 years old, Lily was the kind of child who lit up every room she entered. She had this infectious laugh that could make even the grumpiest grocery store clerk smile. Her hair was her pride and joy, thick, curly, and the most beautiful shade of auburn I'd ever seen. It cascaded down to the middle of her back in perfect ringlets that caught the sunlight and seemed to glow. She'd been growing it out for 3 years, ever since she saw a picture of a princess in one of her storybooks and declared she wanted to look just like her. "Mommy, when my hair gets long enough, can I donate it to make wigs for sick children?" she'd asked me just a few weeks before that Sunday. The question had caught me off guard, not because it was unusual for Lily to think of others, but because it showed just how much thought she put into everything, even at 8 years old. "Of course, sweetheart," I'd told her. "When you're ready, we can research the best places to donate it. I want to wait until it's really, really long," she'd said, running her fingers through her curls. "That way, someone can get a really good wig." That conversation played in my mind as I prepared for what I thought would be just another ordinary Sunday visit. I'd planned to drop Lily off around noon while I ran some errands, grocery shopping at Peterson's Market, picking up dry cleaning from Chen's Cleaners, maybe stopping by the hardware store to get some supplies for the garden bed Jake and I were planning to install in our backyard. It was March 15th. I remember the date exactly because it was 2 days after Lily's school spring concert, where she'd performed a solo rendition of Tomorrow from Annie. She'd been practicing for weeks, singing it in the shower, humming it while doing her homework, even teaching the words to our neighbor's dog, Buster, who would sit patiently in our yard and listen to her rehearse. The morning started perfectly normal. Lily woke up at 7:30, which was typical for her. She was one of those naturally early rising children who seemed to spring out of bed with energy. She brushed her teeth without being asked, got dressed in her favorite Sunday outfit, a purple dress with tiny flowers that brought out the green in her eyes, and carefully brushed her long curls until tea. "Hey Sean, can I bring my art project to show Grandma and Grandpa?" she asked while eating her breakfast of whole grain waffles with fresh strawberries. "Of course," I said, watching her carefully cut her waffle into perfect squares. Lily was methodical about everything, even eating. "I'm sure they'll love to see it." "Do you think Aunt Miranda will be there?" Lily asked hopefully. My sister Miranda had always been Lily's favorite relative. She worked as a graphic designer in the city, about an hour away, but she made a point of visiting our parents most Sundays. Miranda was 32, 3 years younger than me, and had this effortless cool that Lily absolutely adored. She always brought interesting stories from the city, little gifts from trendy shops, and she treated Lily like she was the most fascinating person in the world. "I'm sure she will be," I told Lily. "You know how much she loves spending time with you." We loaded up our silver Honda Accord around 11:45 a.m. Lily buckled herself into her booster seat. She was very independent about car safety and carefully placed her art project in a protective folder on the seat beside her. She'd also packed a small backpack with some books, colored pencils, and her favorite stuffed elephant, Chester, just in case she got bored, though she never did at my parents' house. The drive to Maple Street was beautiful that day. Spring was just beginning to show itself in Millbrook. The dogwood trees were starting to bloom, creating patches of white and pink along the tree-lined streets. Lily pressed her face to the window, pointing out every flowering tree and commenting on how pretty everything looked. "Mom, do you think when I'm grown up, I'll live in a house with lots of flowers in the yard like Grandma's?" she asked as we turned onto Maple Street. "You can live wherever makes you happy, sweetheart," I told her. "You might want a house with flowers, or maybe you'll want to live in a big city like Aunt Miranda, or maybe somewhere completely different that we haven't even thought of yet." "I think I want flowers," she decided, "and maybe a dog like Buster, but smaller so he can sit on my lap." These were the kinds of conversations that made me grateful for every moment with Lily. She had this way of seeing the world that was both innocent and wise, and I love getting these glimpses into her thoughts and dreams. We pulled into my parents' driveway at exactly noon. Their house was a charming 2-story colonial with white shutters and a wraparound porch that my mother kept decorated with seasonal flowers. Today, the porch planters were filled with bright yellow daffodils and purple crocuses, the first flowers of spring. Lily practically bounced out of the car, her art project clutched carefully in her hands and Chester tucked under her arm. She loved the ritual of walking up to their front door, which was painted a cheerful red and had a brass knocker shaped like a pineapple, a symbol of hospitality. My mother always reminded us. "Ring the doorbell, Lily," I encouraged, even though I had a key. She loved this part of the routine. The door opened before she could even reach the bell. My mother, Beatrice, stood there with her usual warm smile, wearing a floral apron over her Sunday dress. At 62, she was still a beautiful woman, with silver hair that she kept in a neat bob and kind blue eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. "There's my little sunshine," she exclaimed, opening her arms wide. Lily ran straight into her embrace, and I felt that familiar warmth in my chest watching them together. This was what I'd wanted for Lily, this sense of being cherished and celebrated just for existing. "Grandma, I brought my art project to show you," Lily announced, holding up her folder. "I can't wait to see it," Beatrice said, ushering us both inside. "Grandpa's in his workshop, but he'll be in for lunch soon. And guess what? Aunt Miranda is here. And she's brought something special for you." Lily's eyes widened with excitement. "Really? What is it?" "You'll have to ask her yourself," Beatrice said with a wink. "She's in the kitchen helping me with lunch." The house smelled like roasted chicken and fresh bread, scents that immediately transported me back to my own childhood. Everything looked exactly the same as it had for years. The family photos covering the mantelpiece, the antique rocking chair by the window where my mother liked to sit and read, the old upright piano that both Miranda and I had learned to play on. We walked into the kitchen, where Miranda was indeed waiting, leaning against the counter with a cup of coffee in her hands. She looked stylish as always, wearing dark jeans and a cream-colored sweater that probably cost more than my entire outfit. Her dark hair was cut in a trendy bob that made her look sophisticated and effortlessly cool. "Lily," Miranda exclaimed, setting down her coffee and opening her arms. "Come here, my favorite niece." "I'm your only niece," Lily giggled, but she ran to Miranda for a hug anyway. "That just makes you extra special," Miranda said, squeezing her tight. "I brought you something. But first I want to see what you've been working on at school." Lily carefully opened her folder and pulled out her watercolor painting. It was actually quite good for an 8-year-old. She'd captured Mr. Whiskers' orange and white markings perfectly, and she'd even managed to paint his green eyes with surprising accuracy. Lily, this is absolutely beautiful, Beatrice exclaimed, taking the painting and holding it up to examine it more closely. Look at how you got all the details right. Mr. Whiskers looks just like he's about to pounce on something. Mrs. Henderson says I have a natural eye for color, Lily said proudly. She might recommend me for the advanced art class next year. That's wonderful, sweetheart, I said, feeling proud of her accomplishment. You've been working so hard on your art. Speaking of art, Miranda said, reaching into a bag by her feet, I found something at this amazing vintage shop in the city that I thought you might like. She pulled out a small wooden box with intricate painted designs on the lid. It's an art supply box. See, it has compartments for different colored pencils, and a special spot for erasers, and even a little section for tiny paintbrushes. Lily's eyes went wide as Miranda opened the box to show her all the compartments. Oh my gosh, Aunt Miranda, it's perfect, thank you so much, she hugged Miranda again. Then immediately started examining all the different sections of the box. I thought you could keep all your art supplies organized in it, Miranda said. Professional artists always have good storage for their materials. Watching this interaction, I felt nothing but happiness. This was family at its best, people who genuinely cared about each other, who celebrated a child's interests and encouraged her dreams. Lily was glowing with the attention and praise, and I loved seeing her feel so valued and supported. Well, I said, checking my watch, I should probably head out and run my errands. Will you be okay here for a few hours, Lily? Can I stay until after lunch? Lily asked hopefully. Grandma said she made my favorite cookies, and Aunt Miranda promised to show me some of her design work on her laptop. Of course, I said. I'll be back around 3 o'clock. Okay, take your time, dear, Beatrice said, already starting to set the table for lunch. You know how much we love having Lily here. She's never any trouble at all. I kissed Lily goodbye, reminded her to be good and to say please and thank you, and headed back to my car feeling grateful for having such a loving extended family for my daughter. As I drove away, I could see through the kitchen window that Lily was already deep in conversation with Miranda, probably asking her a million questions about life in the city. My errands took longer than expected. Peterson's market was crowded with the after-church crowd, and I ended up chatting with several neighbors in the aisles. Mrs. Patterson wanted to know how Lily's spring concert had gone, and Mr. Kelly asked about Jake's new promotion at the engineering firm. The hardware store was having a sale on gardening supplies, so I spent extra time picking out the perfect plants for our new flower bed. It was almost 3:15 by the time I pulled back into my parents' driveway. I felt Lily, this is absolutely beautiful, Beatrice exclaimed, taking the painting and holding it up to examine it more closely. Look at how you got all the details right. Mr. Whiskers looks just like he's about to pounce on something. Mrs. Henderson says I have a natural eye for color, Lily said proudly. She might recommend me for the advanced art class next year. That's wonderful, sweetheart, I said, feeling proud of her accomplishment. You've been working so hard on your art. Speaking of art, Miranda said, reaching into a bag by her feet, I found something at this amazing vintage shop in the city that I thought you might like. She pulled out a small wooden box with intricate painted designs on the lid. It's an art supply box. See, it has compartments for different colored pencils, and a special spot for erasers, and even a little section for tiny paintbrushes. Lily's eyes went wide as Miranda opened the box to show her all the compartments. Oh my gosh, Aunt Miranda, it's perfect, thank you so much, she hugged Miranda again. Then immediately started examining all the different sections of the box. I thought you could keep all your art supplies organized in it, Miranda said. Professional artists always have good storage for their materials. Watching this interaction, I felt nothing but happiness. This was family at its best, people who genuinely cared about each other, who celebrated a child's interests and encouraged her dreams. Lily was glowing with the attention and praise, and I loved seeing her feel so valued and supported. Well, I said, checking my watch, I should probably head out and run my errands. Will you be okay here for a few hours, Lily? Can I stay until after lunch? Lily asked hopefully. Grandma said she made my favorite cookies, and Aunt Miranda promised to show me some of her design work on her laptop. Of course, I said. I'll be back around 3 o'clock. Okay, take your time, dear, Beatrice said, already starting to set the table for lunch. You know how much we love having Lily here. She's never any trouble at all. I kissed Lily goodbye, reminded her to be good and to say please and thank you, and headed back to my car feeling grateful for having such a loving extended family for my daughter. As I drove away, I could see through the kitchen window that Lily was already deep in conversation with Miranda, probably asking her a million questions about life in the city. My errands took longer than expected. Henderson's market was crowded with the after-church crowd, and I ended up chatting with several neighbors in the aisles. Mrs. Patterson wanted to know how Lily's spring concert had gone, and Mr. Kelly asked about Jake's new promotion at the engineering firm. The hardware store was having a sale on gardening supplies, so I spent extra time picking out the perfect plants for our new flower bed. It was almost 3:15 by the time I pulled back into my parents' driveway. I felt slightly guilty for being late. I'd promised Lily I'd be back at 3, and she was usually very precise about time. As I walked up to the front door, I noticed how quiet the house seemed. Usually, when Lily was there, you could hear her voice or laughter from outside. I used my key to let myself in, calling out, "I'm back, sorry I'm a little late," as I stepped into the entryway. No response. "Lily, Mom," I called again, a little louder this time, still nothing. The living room was empty, but I could see signs that Lily had been there. Her new art box was sitting on the coffee table, along with some colored pencils and a partially completed drawing. Her stuffed elephant, Chester, was sitting on the couch. I walked toward the kitchen, and that's when I heard it, a sound that made every instinct in my body scream that something was wrong. Lily was crying. Not the frustrated tears of a child who couldn't have a cookie before dinner, or the disappointed sniffles of someone who'd lost a game. This was raw, desperate sobbing. The kind of crying that meant real fear, real distress. I ran. The kitchen doorway seemed to stretch as I approached it, like something out of a nightmare. And then I saw them, and for a moment, my brain couldn't process what I was looking at. Lily was sitting in one of the wooden dining chairs, pressed back against it. Her small hands were gripping the armrests so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. Her face was red and streaked with tears, and she was making these awful hiccuping sobs that children make when they've been crying for a long time. Miranda was standing behind the chair, her hands on Lily's shoulders, holding her in place. She wasn't being gentle about it. Her grip looked firm, restraining. And my mother, Beatrice, was standing to Lily's right with a pair of kitchen scissors in her hand. But it was what I saw on the floor that made my world tilt off its axis. Hair. Lily's beautiful, long auburn curls, scattered across the linoleum floor like fallen leaves. Lily's hair, which moments before had been cascading down her back in perfect ringlets, was now chopped off unevenly just above her ears. Chunks were missing in some places, leaving bald spots. Other sections were cut at different lengths, creating a jagged, uneven mess. She looked like a completely different child. She looked destroyed. "What are you doing?" I screamed, my voice cracking with shock and rage. The sound of my voice broke whatever trance they'd all been in. Lily's head snapped toward me, and the look of relief and desperation on her face will haunt me forever. "Mommy," she sobbed, reaching her arms out toward me. They wouldn't stop. I told them to stop, but they wouldn't listen. I rushed toward her, but Miranda stepped between us. "Calm down, Rachel," Miranda said, like I was the one being unreasonable. "We're almost finished." "Finished with what?" I demanded, trying to get around her to reach Lily. "What have you done to her?" "We had to cut it," my mother said matter-of-factly, like she was explaining why she'd pruned a houseplant. "It was getting out of hand." "Out of hand," I repeated, staring at her in disbelief. "It's her hair. She's been growing it for 3 years." "Exactly," Beatrice said. 3 years is too long." It was becoming inappropriate. I looked at Miranda, waiting for her to explain, to make this make sense somehow. She'd always been reasonable. Had always been on Lily's side. She needed to look more presentable, Miranda said, avoiding my eyes. The long hair made her look wild. Wild? They'd called my 8-year-old daughter wild because she had long, beautiful hair that she loved and took care of. I finally managed to push past Miranda and reach Lily. I knelt down in front of her chair and cupped her face in my hands, trying to wipe away her tears. "It's okay." Beatrice would show up at our house with homemade baby food and hand-wear-upon blankets. Theodore, who had always been somewhat reserved, would spend hours on the floor playing peekaboo with Lily, making silly faces until she giggled. They seemed to genuinely adore her. When Jake got the job transfer to Millbrook, bringing us closer to my parents, it felt like a blessing. They offered to help with childcare, insisted on having Lily over for regular visits, and made her feel like she was the center of their universe. As a working mother trying to balance my career in marketing with raising a young child, their support felt invaluable. Miranda, too, had embraced her role as the fun aunt. Despite living an hour away in the city, she made time for Lily every week. She'd bring art supplies, take her to museums, and treat her like she was the most fascinating person in the world. Lily absolutely worshipped Miranda, often talking about wanting to be just like Aunt Miranda when she grew up. The Sunday visits had become sacred family time. We'd established this routine where I'd drop Lily off for a few hours while I ran errands, then return for a late lunch together. It gave me time to handle adult responsibilities while ensuring Lily maintained a strong relationship with her grandparents and aunt. During these visits, Lily would come home bubbling with stories. Grandma Beatrice had taught her to bake cookies. Grandpa Theodore had shown her his collection of vintage postcards. Aunt Miranda had let her try on her jewelry and makeup. Everything seemed perfect. There had been small moments that, in hindsight, should have concerned me. Comments about Lily being a bit too energetic or suggestions that she needed to learn proper behavior for young ladies. But these seemed like normal generational differences. My parents were in their 60s, after all, and had different ideas about childhood than Jake and I did. When Lily started growing her hair out 3 years ago, my parents had made occasional remarks about it getting quite long or being difficult to manage. But Lily loved her hair, took excellent care of it, and it was absolutely beautiful. I saw no reason to cut it just because they thought it was getting too long. Miranda had always seemed supportive of Lily's choices. She'd compliment her hair, bring her special brushes and hair accessories, and even taught her different ways to braid it. She'd never expressed any concern about the length. That's why walking into that kitchen felt like stepping into an alternate reality. These people who had loved and supported Lily for years had suddenly decided to physically restrain her and forcibly cut off her hair against her will. The violence of it, the complete disregard for her autonomy, was something I never could have imagined from them. As I held my sobbing daughter in that kitchen, surrounded by her beautiful curls scattered across the floor, I realized I had been living in a carefully constructed illusion. The loving grandparents and supportive aunt were masks they wore when it suited them. Underneath was something much darker: a need to control, to force compliance, to break a child's spirit if she didn't conform to their expectations. But I still didn't understand why. What had triggered this sudden, violent assertion of control? What had changed between the warm hugs when I dropped her off and the trauma I'd walked into? I was about to find out that this wasn't sudden at all. It was the culmination of something that had been building for months, and I had been too trusting to see it coming. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.